How are you doing?
Yeah, tough. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Thanks so much for coming onto the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah,
You and I think we've spoken about this for a couple of weeks, and I'm really excited that we could land a date and that we could actually
yeah,
do this episode. So I'm quite excited for what we're going to talk about today. So thanks for coming on to Impactful Conversations. Really do appreciate your presence here. Maddie, to start off, we typically sort of start off by getting to know you a little bit. Um, and so I think, we're going to start with a little bit of general Q&A. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what did you study, what do you
right.
do currently, and what are you passionate about as well?
Awesome. So originally born and bred Joburg boy, but I
Mm,
did grow up in the UK for 8 years. So I'm a bit of a mixed breed between the English and South African culture.
yeah.
You can probably see that in my dress sense. Um, I studied finance at UJ.
Okay.
Then I went and studied a postgraduate degree at Gibbs Business School,
Yeah.
which is really insightful. And currently, I'm at Investec. I'm an external business consultant. So what we primarily do is we bridge the relationship between the bank and business owners and entrepreneurs in South Africa. So
Mm,
it's really exciting. It's like a mixed batch of different things in one, which is really awesome.
amazing. So I'm going to dive into one of the questions that we got from the Instagram Q&A. And one of the questions was around, do you feel like you took the right career path? And if
Okay.
so, why?
All right. So I think one thing I should sort of begin with is I'm a big believer of intuitive sort of direction. And at the time in 2019, when I was interning at Investec, this opportunity came around for this role,
Yeah.
and something just felt right. It felt like I needed to be in this role, and it seemed like the role that was going to sort of project me, upwards and onwards.
Yeah.
And I must be honest, being in a role now where you're in a bank, which is very analytical and finance related, it allows you to really enhance what you study. One thing I must sort of add is the people at Investec are absolutely incredible. So there's that emotional intelligence side of it where you've got caring, humble, beautiful people who want to be with you and work with you and help encourage that growth. And then you've obviously got the role, which is challenging in itself, and so forth. But
Mm,
if I have to answer you honestly, did I see myself working in a bank? Probably not.
yeah.
Uh, I'm not sure. It's kind of a very difficult one. I think I'm very much a creative. So I've got like the finance side and I've got the fun
Mm,
side, and
mm,
so a part of that, comes out in my creative work and also comes out in my work at the bank. So the
yeah.
empath, emotional intelligence. But I think it's a position where you are for the people and for
Yeah.
the country and for the economy, which is definitely a representation of who I am. And so then
Yeah.
I would say it's a very good fit.
Yeah. That's really awesome. That's really awesome. Let's turn it down a little bit. I'm going to ask you some
Okay.
lighthearted questions, just for us
Awesome.
to know you a little bit better. But I think you answered that really well. And
Thanks.
thank you for sharing that with us. So tell us a little bit about your daily routine. So what's a
Okay.
day in Matty Partridge's life like?
Okay.
Are you a morning person, evening person? Yeah. So what's your sort of your typical day, particularly now? I think in lockdown, how does it sort of go? How
Yeah.
do you structure your time? How do you manage your time?
Okay. So if I had to answer this probably like 3 weeks ago, I would probably say that it was a completely different routine. Safa, I
Yeah.
lost you
Can you?
there.
No, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I
Yeah.
probably have to say it was a different routine. I mean, I've been slowly shifting to a new sort of structure in my life over the last couple months, and if I have to be honest with you, the last 3-4 weeks I've really been pushing this whole new routine. I'm very much a morning person, but when I studied, I was an evening person, so I would be very much a night owl. I'd work at night and I'd be up late. The reason why I've started waking up early is because I feel like if you wake up early, you can get more done when there's less distractions.
Yes.
I've got a checklist. So, what I try and do is I have journals. So I write my journals.
Mm,
I've got a gratitude journal and then a manifestation journal. And
yeah.
that's just getting me into the right sort of space mentally for the day. I have a cold shower. I have my herbal tea, and I meditate and do yoga. But that's sort of structured throughout the day, so it depends on where it fits in. And I usually do that in the morning just to set the tone, get my head right, not let myself get distracted. And so it's been a profound change. I'm still getting used to the cold showers, but I have to be honest, it's been paying off. It really has.
You're a brave man to be taking in this Joburg winter at the moment. So I salute you for that. Look, so so if the restaurants are going to open fairly soon in South Africa, what's the first meal that you are keen to have the moment they open?
I think restaurant burgers are like the best things you can find. I love a good burger. It's juicy. It's got everything you need. It's got some chips, and you've got a bit of the carbs. And I just think it's a simple meal. Everyone always says, "Oh, why do you get a burger? You can have a burger at home." But I don't know, something about a nice, burger just fills the gap for me right now.
I agree. I completely agree. I could not agree with you more. I mean, I'm looking forward to one of those, really. And one of those which feel like a cheat meal. Those ones.
Yes.
Those kind of burgers.
It is a cheat meal,
So Matty, who's your favorite artist or band? Actually, that's sort of the last question I wanted to ask you. Sort of this portion.
Okay, so I get asked this often, and I feel like I don't have a particular band or artist that I'm fond of, but I've got more genres. There's more sort of genres that I align with, and I mean every day is different. Sometimes you'll hear classical music, sometimes you'll hear indie, alternative, but it's very much the drums and the instruments with some voice. It's like symphonies, very low. It's not mellow. It's not too erratic, and so that's my style. I don't have any particulars like Matthew Moore. I love Ben Howard, but I don't want to get too particular because it's music in general.
Good choices so far. So Matty, let's dive right in. Right. So you have a podcast. It's called Matter to Mind. Awesome podcast. I've listened to a couple of your episodes. Tell me a little bit about this. So what inspired you to first of all start sort of this journey? And what inspires you to talk about the topics that you do talk about as well?
Okay. So I think for me, I've always wanted to do a podcast. I've always checked out Joe Rogan and the likes, and I thought, that would be so much fun. Just talk about whatever you want to talk about, have guests on your show, and just really enjoy yourself. And I bought the mic next to me. I bought it probably about 4 or 5 months before I actually used it. But in that space, I really developed my article writing on LinkedIn. And I was talking about stuff that I really find interesting. And a lot of that stuff is neuroscience and psychology and human behavior. Obviously, with the business and the finance, it's kind of emerged into one. And I thought, let me talk about it. And let me kind of, I took my first podcast was actually an article that I took into the podcast form. It's kind of like a story. And that was just to help find my voice. I don't know if you agree with this, but there's times where I feel like I want to do a podcast, but maybe I don't have the voice today. I don't know if I want to speak on this. It gets a little bit intricate. It's a difficult challenge. But I think it was just being inspired by all these guys that are doing it like yourself. I think watching you start your podcast was like, Tough is doing it. I've got it. I'm here. Let me do it with him.
But I do agree with you. I mean, it's not as perfect a road as people think, right? It's not, you don't just sort of start and every day you feel like recording an episode, right? There are some where it's like, well, like I really don't feel like it, or it's been a difficult week, and all of that. You also have the sort of overarching vision that you want to achieve and the overarching purpose behind what you're doing. So tell us, where can we find it? Where can we find the podcast if we want to listen to it?
Okay. So obviously Instagram, there's some links there, and I've also recorded some and put it on my page, Matthew John Partridge. And then obviously on Spotify, on Apple Music, and I want to get it onto YouTube. I just haven't done it yet. I've been a bit lazy. But yes, so obviously the Apple Music and Spotify, that's the main sort of spaces that they exist. And Podbean. Podbean is the podcast software that I use. So, I mean, but no one really goes there.
But, I would recommend to anybody who's listening right now to go and check that out, and
Thanks.
to go
Thank you,
give
Tom.
it a subscribe and a review as well. So
That'd be awesome.
I want to talk about the future of small businesses in South Africa, right? Let's really dive into this topic. You recently wrote an article on LinkedIn about this particular topic, I think about 2 months ago.
Yes.
About the sort of challenges that small businesses were facing.
Yeah.
I want to sort of, for the first part of this, focus a little bit on the South African focus. So let's shift to South African, particularly South African focus. And sort of in the 2 months or so since you wrote that article, you spoke a little bit about the president of South Africa's approach, and the challenges that he would have to balance. The sort of interest or balance of interest that he would have to take in.
Yes.
2 months from now, if I ask you to sort of critique his approach, and rather, I'm more critiquing the intention rather than the implementation. We'll get to the implementation in a second.
Okay.
But if you sort of look at the approach and the intention of the approach, how would you rate that so far?
So I think, Cyril being a businessman, I think, his strengths lie in developing and building, not just in a business sense, but in an economic sense. And so I think, from his point of view, he thought, the best thing was to secure the lives of the South African population, ensure that everyone is safe and healthy. There will be detrimental effects on the economy and businesses, but because that's his strength, maybe he relied on himself being able to pick that up and allow that to grow post-COVID. I think his intention was sincere. I wish he would have addressed the nation a little bit more. I think there were times where people were like, "Where's Cyril? We haven't heard from Cyril. We're all in lockdown."
We kind of missed him a little bit, didn't we?
A little bit.
And we didn't know what he is.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of felt a little bit like,
"Is he all right? Is he healthy? Is he okay?"
Yeah, is he alive? It kind of felt a little bit like martial law. We were stuck in houses, and I was, what's going on? But I think, in terms of where we are, I have a direct link between, the actual business owners in South Africa, specifically in Gauteng, because we shifted, to province and demographics or geographics. And, the one thing I must say, to add it as a point is South Africans are absolutely resilient. I chatted to clients from level 5 down to current time. And, guys are saying, well, we'll only open at level 1. But we're optimistic and we're positive. And then there was the odd person who was nervous and apprehensive. But I think in terms of a nation, we are a strong, resilient nation, and I think we take everything that comes our way. On the economic side, look, it's been tough. I think small businesses have really suffered. I think it's been a little bit unbiased. It's been a little bit biased where you've seen the major corporations and the major supermarkets and businesses open with sort of the same effect, but small businesses suffer because they've been restricted. And so you kind of ask some big questions as to why that is when they fit in the same group or space. And so I really feel for the entrepreneurs and the business owners. On the other side, on the sort of other polarity is, you've got business owners who were trading in the likes of medicine or ethanol. And so when COVID came, they struck it big. I've had some clients who've really, hit gold because their businesses thrived during this coronavirus. And so you've seen this duality of good and bad and destruction and success. And it's been very interesting to observe.
So, if I had to ask you, what are the sort of 2 or 3 key financial challenges that SMEs face at the moment in the current situation, and at current recording times we're in level 3, but I guess we're now in what is being called quote unquote advanced level 3, which is level 3 but with sort of more relaxed restrictions. What do you think are the sort of key financial challenges that small businesses face at the moment?
Okay, so I think the first one would be uncertainty. So the lack or inability to forecast. I think the second thing would be your overheads. A lot of businesses are still paying rent, they're still having to pay staff, but they're not producing or they're not at full capacity. So their margins are more diminished. And then the third one, that would be an interesting one. I think maybe it would be unexpected costs, that this coronavirus has created. Maybe having to buy a lot of sanitizer or maybe different equipment, and having to get licensing in order to trade certain things. I think it's added a lot of elements beyond what we can see. And guys have really been hustling, to make sure that they're compliant and in line with regulations. You know what I'm saying?
So, I mean, I think you're quite right in the sort of unexpected costs. A lot of is now sort of a lot of move towards, your hygiene budget is all of a sudden, quadrupled. And you never quite see that coming in January or February, right?
Yes.
You're now all of a sudden buying a lot of sanitizers, a lot of PPE, a lot of masks, and trying to source those necessary components to be able to reopen and operate safely. And if you were in charge of a small business, if I put you front and center in charge of an SME, and an SME that's not benefiting from this time, so you're not in the sort of pharmaceuticals, or you're not in the manufacturing of PPE or anything like that, what would be your approach right now? How would you talk to your employees, and balance the sort of need for employees feeling that actually we're going to be okay, and your own doubts as well as a small business owner, because you're also not sure if the business itself is going to be okay. And that includes you, yourself, your family, your dependents and such. What would be your approach as a small business owner at the moment, and how would you balance that with the approach towards your employees as well?
Okay, so I think the first thing I would do is I'm pretty black and white. So I would probably have a meeting with my employees or the entire business, and I would be honest, and I would say, listen, coronavirus has affected us X, Y, and Z. These are the implications, because it's reality. You can't run away from the fact that it's the truth, that coronavirus has affected on their business. And then what I would do is I would then probably get a team together and start innovating around where our market is and how we can maybe fall out of that, differentiate, diversify, innovate, and to see if we can and still function within the coronavirus implications, still make a revenue, even if it's not in our direct line of work. I think what that'll do is that'll create a positive energy towards, employees wanting to find a solution. And it might even spark some creativity we never saw before. I think that the reality is, and I think if we can speak on an honest truth, I think there are many guys and girls out there who are very stressed about, the implications on their personal life and their family. I think, luckily, I think a lot of these business owners are very smart, and so they've saved for a rainy day. But if it was me, I would be honest, but I would always want the best for my employees, because if you understand it, one employee has a family of 4 on average. You're affecting, not just 4 people, but 40. You know what I'm saying? And so, I think the reality is you've got to be mindful of your staff. You've got to work a way around, making sure that they still get financially supported. I would probably take a salary cut myself as a CEO, to ensure that whatever balance was left in that was then subsidized to the employees to keep the business flowing. I think that would be my move going forward.
Yeah, I love that. I love the sort of set the focus on employees and having an employee-centered approach. In this time, I think it's incredibly uncertain. Not just as a small business owner, but as a small business employee as well. It's incredibly uncertain. So if I move slightly out of the sort of small business, but now I remove you from it, and I say you're an investor, right?
Okay.
Is now the right time to invest into small businesses? So for investors right now who are quite keen to invest, is it the right time to invest in small businesses, in your opinion? And what are the sort of risks associated with that? Obviously, the one obvious one is, you invest into a business and the business doesn't make it, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't survive the sort of time.
Yes.
Do you think it's the right time for people to invest? And could that potentially be part of the solution, is the sort of investment into small businesses and the support thereof as well?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, in reality, you'll probably find that most of these guys that want to invest will go offshore. I mean, we've seen that for the last, X amount of years. Um, but I think, right now, specifically today, I think it's still a bit too early. I think what you'll find is there are going to be guys who want to sell because they're desperate.
Yes.
And unfortunately, you'll have the hawks, certain individuals who will pick that up at a cheap price, where it's not really supporting the entrepreneur. So it's kind of a catch-22, because you'll have guys that will capitalize on other people's disadvantage.
Yes.
And so for me personally, obviously this is a reflection of myself, not on anyone else. These are my own views and opinions. But I think, it's twofold. There will be a lot of opportunity right now, but I think personally, it would be a bit too early. I think we have to sort of see level 3 to level 1 and see really what the damage is, because we know there's damage, but we haven't really seen the damage, because some shops are open and some are closed. And I think when we're fully open and we see, oh goodness, we go into a supermarket and only 50% of the shops are actually open and functioning, then we can understand, the statistics and the damage behind that. And then I think there would be opportunity to see if there's revival, to see if there's opportunity to take on someone else's, business that they couldn't, manage. But I think what we really need is we need a shift in the ideology of money. I think there needs to be a mental shift in understanding that these systems that we've learned through years and years and years of an outdated system are not necessarily wrong, but I'm not saying that they are the best and most utilized. And I think there's ways in which we can improve the monetary system and improve the system for the people of our country, improve the system for business owners and entrepreneurs, for corporations. And I think everyone can win, because if you look at it, it's kind of skewed. Not everyone is winning. Some people are losing. I think there could be more of a balanced sort of approach when you look at, how the system actually functions.
Yeah. No, excellent response. I think, you're quite right in that we're not too sure what the situation is at the moment. And I can understand where you're coming from with that. So what would you say to someone who is looking to start a business right now? Would you say to them, hang on? Would you say to them, what industry are you trying to be in, first of all? Or would you say, go for it? Try and see if you can actually do it in this time. What would you say to someone who's in that scenario?
Okay, so I have a very interesting answer to that, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel when a person has an idea, they are passionate and really involved in the thought of manifesting that idea and turning it into a business, right? Now, what you'll find naturally is other people are in their own spaces, in their own mental space. So when you display that idea to someone else, you get an answer that's reflective of that person. And what you'll find normally is you won't have 100% buy-in, because when you have the vision, only you have the vision. No one else has the vision. And so I feel it's detrimental to anyone who wants to start a business to firstly go out and say, should I do this, and get advice. I think you've got to know in yourself, is this a good idea? Obviously support it with evidence and forecasting and statistics and so forth. So do your research and your mathematics and so forth. But I think intuitively you'll know if this is something you want to do, if you're passionately focused on doing it. Because I feel in my case as well, there's been times where you've got an idea and you kind of lose the love for that idea because other people say it's not good or it's not something you should do, because they wouldn't do it themselves. And so I always say, be bold. Obviously weigh up the financial implications and understand what costs are involved. Don't get yourself into debt. Utilize debt, because the real way to make money is to use other people's money. So you utilize the credit or the debt, and you make sure that you build a system that's functionable. I think that would really be the right way to go going forward. And then you don't, detriment your own, you're not detrimental to your own self and your own idea, and you trust your own intuition. And I think the power of trusting yourself, that self-confidence, is is the most amazing thing.
No, awesome. I really love that answer. I think it really balances the sort of desire to start something, but with the sort of caution that is required. General in starting a business in general, but also in this sort of time as well. In this sort of really uncertain financial time as well. So lastly, on this sort of topic, what advice would you give to a small business owner? And I know you have been an entrepreneur before yourself. You've gone through this process of starting and running a business as well. What piece of advice would you give to a small business owner who's listening to the show, and who kind of needs that sort of word of advice during this time to keep them going forward?
So I think the first thing I need to say is, again, these are obviously the opinions of myself and not a reflection of anyone else. But I think one thing that I love about times like this, the uncertainty breeds opportunity. On a local level, on a national level, on an international level. I mean, you go and see how many businesses were bred during 2008. I think times like this is really where we birth ideas and we birth revolutions into new spaces. I'm a pro digital entrepreneur, so I really believe in the digital space, although I do believe in the human element too. So there's got to be a sort of duality in that space. But I think, if I had to really speak to someone and say, if you needed an input or someone's input like myself, I would say that now is a really good time to thrive on any opportunity that presents itself. And it can be from anything, whether it's investing in a business that's fallen away, whether it's buying businesses that are now being for sale, or if it's identifying key niches where it's like, well, where are we moving pre-corona, at corona, post-corona, identifying, what opportunities are present. I think there's some really intelligent guys out there and girls out there who have that ability to spot, these opportunities, and I think they should just go for it.
Yeah. And I think, if a small business owner is listening to that, I think that's really impactful. So thank you, Matty, for that.
My pleasure.
Let's move to positive mindset, right?
Awesome.
I know you're a big proponent of this particular belief, and sort of keeping positive in spite of your circumstances. But tell me a little bit about this sort of belief. Where did this sort of come from for you? In terms of the challenges that you've had to face as well, how has this sort of belief come about and strengthened itself as well in your life?
So if I'm honest, it came through hardship. It came through difficulties. I think that's where any form of positivity is bred, because you have to understand everything is polarized. And so on the other side of positivity is negativity, and you have to understand what that means. And so I think, for me growing up, difficult circumstances and challenges that I faced, home at 16 and sort of being thrown back into the deep end with certain things, and just, implications, in the family and so forth, that really made it challenging. I think it's firstly important to add, whoever's watching, that I haven't always been positive. I went through a period from about the ages of 16 to 20 where it wasn't happy-go-lucky, positive, let's do this kind of vibe. It was very much a dark, cloudy space, and so I really understand and empathize with people who say, they're going through a dark patch, because I can resonate with that. But what I understand now,
how do you get yourself out of that to sort of the mindset that you are in now? So sort of from that sort of mindset where dark sort of cloud or dark sort of sort of mental state of mind to where you are currently. I think that's quite an important thing to touch on and to build on. The lessons that you've learned in that process, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure.
How did you get out of that? I mean, that is such a difficult place to get out of coming into a positive mindset as well.
So I think, in my opinion of everything is everything's cause and effect. And so what you'll find is if you find yourself in that space, you kind of loop in and out of that space. It's continuous. You can't really see a way out because it's just so clouded and dark and so forth. But I think I recently understood a term that kind of could really give people clarity, and that's the term of transmutation. So you're transmuting that energy into something else, something more powerful. So what I mean by that is you're taking that negative energy, you're understanding it for what it is. You're saying, instead of saying, why me? Why am I experiencing? You're saying, well, what does this teach me? What is the positive element of this? And so I started looking at things with a silver lining and started saying, well, if we look at science and maths, there's a positive and a negative, right? And they attract. So with every negative, there's a positive, and with every positive, there's a negative. And that can be seen in duality, that can be seen in yin and yang. And so I realized that although these elements in my life are very negative, there is a positive in every space. And so I started shifting out of that sort of cycle, and I started breaking through the loops, and I started understanding that I was learning more than anything else. It wasn't about being awful. And remember, other people have gone through far worse. But it was now saying, well, how do I shift out of that consciously and understand that this is just a mindset? I'm just trapped in this mindset. I need to get out of it. I need to observe it for what it is. And I need to transmute that energy into something positive and beneficial. So, I started shifting everything in my life. And that has been progressively happening for the last 4 years. I mean, maybe more recently I've had more extreme shifts, but really, really shifting and understanding that every negative element in your life has a positive effect. Whether it's right now or 4 months or 4 years, you will see the positive element of what that brings to your life, but only if you're conscious of what it's doing and how you're responding to it. And so it's like building a relationship. You've got to love your darkness. You've got to love the shadows, love the depression or the anxiety. You've got to love it because you've got to understand why it's in your life and what it's teaching you. And when you love it and you let it go, you move on and you start realizing you can actually transmutate that energy, and you can become more positive and more, opportunistic and happy-go-lucky.
I really, really love that, and I think it's so powerful to be able to take the negative sort of experiences that we experience in life, which most of the time are out of our control. You go through something, and everybody does go through something. But as you quite rightly say, how do we take this scenario and take something positive from it? I think that's a really powerful mindset to be in. So in a global pandemic, right? I mean, we've never seen anything like this, right? I remember when, sort of this whole sort of thing started, someone said to me, it's 100 years since the Spanish flu. Apparently before that, there was something before that. And 100 years before that, there was also something then. This is unlike anything that we've seen in our lifetime, unless you're 100 plus. I remember there's a lady, I think, from Spain who, I think survived the previous pandemic before and survived this one as well. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But for everybody else who hasn't a pandemic, how do you keep this positive mindset, right? Now I'm bringing this to you. We spoke about small business owners, and we spoke about, how sort of as an employee as well, how do you sort of keep a positive mindset in that space? But I'm bringing this to you now. In a global pandemic, in a scenario that neither of us could have seen coming, right? If I said to you a year ago that, hey, Maddie, you and I would be confined to our homes for at least a couple of months, right? We'd have to wear masks as we went outside. You'd tell me that I'm crazy. But
probably,
how do you keep that positive mindset in this sort of environment where, to be quite honest, there's not a lot of positivity right now?
No.
Every day we report new cases. Every day we report new deaths, and every day we live in fear of, what if this happens to me, and what if this happens to somebody I love, and somebody who's listening to this might have lost a loved one, through the pandemic, or might be, have a loved one who's infected and who's really struggling, and it's not an easy disease to come through. But how keep that mindset in a time like this? And I suppose that sort of philosophy is built for a time like this. And actually, everything around you seems bad. But I'm going to bring you. How do you do that? How are you sort of adapting to this and keeping that positive mindset?
Okay, so I think, to give you a sort of intricate answer, and I quite love this space, so I'm really enjoy this answer. But I'm a massive believer of what you think you believe and what you believe you perceive. And so what I'm trying to say is everything that you manifest in your reality, from your experiences to encounters, all start in the brain and in the mind. Okay, and so what I mean by that is when you are associating your thoughts with fear, you're most likely going to experience experiences that are fearful, that encourage fear and are negative. And so what I realized is the minute I started cutting away these elements of fear that we are projected onto, for example, Facebook, the news, I don't watch the news, TV, I don't really watch in general anyway, and elements where you are constantly subjecting yourself to, we're in a pandemic, people are dying, it's crazy, there's destruction. I think it's important to be informed, but I also believe, remember, when you're informing yourself, you can decide to hold on to that. And so what I think happens is when you hold on to that, you let it sit in here, and it becomes your internal reality, which is then your external reality, right? Yeah. And so what I did is I consciously said to myself, I'm not going to watch any news, okay? I understand what's going on, and I do read articles to keep informed, but I'm not going to let it sit, and I'm not going to dwell on it, because when you dwell on it, you start manifesting that thought process, you start manifesting in that space. And that in line with a healthy regime. Obviously, everyone went from home, work to home, and you'll find that it became chaotic. And so I needed that structure to say, okay, I need to have structure, to have order. I need to start my day positively. So I write in my gratitude journal, I write in a manifestation journal, and I'm proactive and I'm positive. So I'm already starting the day so that if anything negative hits me, I'm able to handle it, digest it, and process it. I think speaking on behalf of people who have lost loved ones, I can only send them my absolute love and heartfelt compassion, because I can imagine how tough it must be. And I think not a lot of people are privileged like myself. I am very privileged. I'm able to work from home. I still have a job. People haven't got jobs. I'm still getting paid. Some people aren't getting paid. I've still got food in my stomach. I'm still warm. I'm still able to have a hot shower. So, you've got to really be appreciative and grateful for where you are, and understand that other people aren't where you are. However, in that same space, I also believe I have the voice then to bring that positivity, to bring that change, to encourage others to remain in that positive space. And I think the biggest thing for me that I've learned just in my last 4 years, and not necessarily during Corona, but even maybe now it's really coming to shine during the Corona, is just being resilient, ensuring that I don't hold on to any fear and holding on to anxiety, because when you understand that everyone, it's like global consciousness, right? And what I mean by that is fear can be spread, anxiety can be spread, and usually it's spread through media and so forth. And if you let that have a latch on you, it's going to be a ripple effect, a spiral effect, where you're just going to go downwards into the spiral of doom and gloom. And there's a lot of positivity to it. Everything has a positive and negative element. So you really got to choose where you want to spend your energy and time.
That's incredibly profound, and I think really something that we can apply. And I hope anybody who's listening to this, by now, you surely must have your notebook up. Good.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm that profound yet. I'm hoping. I really do want to write a book one day. So maybe when that book comes out.
I'll be glad to get your signature, Maddie. I really will. And
nice.
So let's talk physical health. As you said rightly, we're all transitioning from. I think now, of course, I think there's a lot more people who are going to work daily than before, but there still is a fair sort of amount of people who are able to work from home, and are being encouraged to work from home, or being encouraged to work from home.
Yes.
How are you keeping in shape currently at this time? And give us some tips on that, and how you're sort of keeping that physical sort of health side of things going, even though you're not moving or taking you
Yeah.
10,000 steps every day, So how is that
Yeah.
sort of playing out?
So in the beginning, I was very lucky. I've got a bit of a garden space here. So what I would do is I'd do yoga in the garden. I've got some weights. I do some weights in the garden. I'd make sure what I'd do is I would do it in the sunlight. And so I'd make sure I'd always get some form of, sunlight, which was also healthy for the physical body. And then when it started getting a bit colder, I started doing more walks. During that 6 to 8 or 9 catchment period, I'd do some more walking, and I would do like 3Ks a day. And then when it got really cold, I shifted indoors. And right behind me over there is my yoga mat. And so what I do is I do stretching and yoga. So it's just making sure blood flow is going, we're still getting functionality. And obviously every now and then going for walks. But I'm very much away from the weights. I'm not doing any form of running. I'm just trying to eat really healthy and make sure I keep my mind, really healthy. And I think everything, in its balance with the physical body, with a healthy body, healthy mind, healthy lifestyle, it all sort of joins together, so that's really where I'm at in terms of, keeping healthy and keeping fit. And it's funny because I've always said to myself, I'm going to stretch, I'm going to get flexible. And again, like when I played rugby, and just be nimble. And, every year comes around and you see the gym and you're like, damn, I need to lift the weights. But I'm really grateful because coronavirus is forcing me onto the mat, and I'm starting to really get some strength I've never had before, just from stretching, from yoga, from some like yoga meditation and stuff. It's been awesome, dude. It's really, really changed my body and my structure. So I'm really grateful.
I love that. What do you think the impact of physical health is on self-image? So what do you think is the relationship between the two, and how do you sort of keep both of those things on the up? And so we spoke a little bit about physical health, but now I just want to bring it back to self-image. What do you think the link is between the two?
Yeah. Do you want my ego to answer, or do you want me to answer? I'm kidding. But I think, look, I'm going to be honest with you, and I think everyone can speak on this. When we're younger, it's all about looking good. You want to, make sure that you've got the best physiques that you can, that very much lives on with us. We always want to look in the mirror and love what we see. That's like self-love. It's a form of self-love. But what I've realized is that love isn't at skin level. It's on a deeper level. It's what value you can bring. It's how you make people feel. And so, I think, you'll find that the most beautiful people are overweight. The most beautiful people can't walk. The most beautiful people can't, swim or, anything. And so I don't think it's a correlation between, the body and mental health and keeping healthy and so forth. But I do think in the environment and the society that we live in, unfortunately, we are surrounded by social media and media that tells us we have to look a certain way, that females have to be -5, that they have to be a certain bra size, that they have to fit this mold, that they have to look like this, have this kind of makeup, where guys have to have a 6-pack and 60-inch arms. And I don't believe that's a reflection of who we really are, because value is not material. It's not what you look like. It's what you bring to the table, right? And so I think there's a misconception there, and I think that's the unfortunate reality that we live in. But I really think that it has an effect on your mind when you wake up in the morning and know that you're healthy in body, in spirit, and in mind. You have a better, happier, healthier day. And so I don't think it's wrong to want to be healthy and to want to be in physical shape. So I think that for me is a big thing.
No, really profound. Thanks, Maddie, for that.
Pleasure, man.
No question for you.
Okay.
As we wrap up to a close, you said that you born and bred in South Africa, but you left South Africa for a time and then you came back.
I did.
Why stay in South Africa?
Okay.
I suppose it's a tricky question to answer, but that is the question: is why stay in South Africa?
Okay, so maybe to give everyone a bit of context, my family immigrated from South Africa when I was 8 years old, and so I went over to the UK and I lived there. Obviously, moved there, brand new school, new environment, new people, and I grew up there for 8 years. And I loved it. It was a small little town. I went to a public school. It was beautiful. It was really, really nice. But I always yearned, somewhere deep inside me, I always yearned to come back. Yeah, for some reason. And I think maybe that was probably the first decision I ever made in my life. I was 16 years old. I came here on Saturday. I went for trials at Saints. I went for an interview at Saints. They're like, come check this guy out and whatever. And meanwhile, I was awful at rugby. So, I'm surprised they even picked me. But I came back to the UK. I went back to the UK and I had an exam. And I remember I got a message from my cousin saying, you've been accepted. Come back. And this was on a Wednesday. So I flew back from South Africa to the UK and I landed on Sunday. I then had my exam on the Wednesday. On that Wednesday, 3 days later, I haven't even had a conversation with my parents. I was told I'd been accepted. I went home on Wednesday night and I trusted how I felt about it. I trusted, is this the right thing that I need to do? Is this where I need to be? And something said I had to come back. Something spoke to me and said, listen, Matt, trust how you feel that, you've got this opportunity. You don't want to live in regret and say, well, what could have happened? And so, I had the conversation with my parents on the Wednesday night. I don't think they believed me. But the reality came when on Saturday that same week, I flew out. Sunday, I landed in Joburg. And Monday, I started school at St. Stithians, which was an all-boys school, never been to a private school. I've never had really any formal structures. So it was completely new. I was there for rugby, and I mean, I remember the first practice. I don't know if you were there. I don't know if you saw it. But we had a first practice, dropping balls, missing tackles. I was like, oh God, man, I'm in for a run here. But I think if I had to look back, it was the best decision that I ever made because just where I've grown in the last 8 years has been absolutely profound. The people I've met, the opportunities I've had, the mistakes I've been able to make. I've really been exposed to like an abundance of beautiful things. And I'm so grateful that I chose, to come back. And I think you can speak to me on this, but your home is where your heart is. And I feel like my heart is here. Whether it's here forever, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll wake up and decide I'm going somewhere else. But I'm so grateful that it's been a part of my journey, coming back.
No, I love that. I really love that answer. And
thanks, man.
Glad to have you here. And thank you
thanks.
for making positive change as well to the people that you interact with, to the people that you know.
Yes.
Matty, I just want to thank you so much for coming onto
the
show, for what has been an amazing chat. Absolutely profound chat. I really loved, particularly around the small business in South Africa and sort of the approach there. Absolutely love that. And I loved, your sort of concepts around, being positive and, taking positives out of every single situation, as well as, on physical health and how that sort of impacts us positively as well. So thank you so much for coming onto the show. I really, really would love if we could, in the future do another episode. I think we've on some topics, but I think I'd really love to chat through other topics with you.
Yes, 100%. Would love to.
I just thank you. I absolutely love your mindset, your positivity. It's radiant. It's so evident, pure. It's abundant. So thank you for that. And thank you for having me. Creation. We really, really, I think, appreciate it. And I think anybody who's listened to this has felt positively impacted and has been educated as well, which is the dual purpose of the show, which is to educate and to inspire. And I think we have achieved that today. So thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thanks, Tafa. I appreciate you having me. It's been a blessing.
Thank you, Matty.